Okay, so for this restorative session today, I'd like you to have a blanket rolled up, a bolster that's just tipped up and leaned into the blanket, and then a blanket on top. So the blanket on the bottom is rolled, the blanket on top is like a quarter fold. You might end up kind of tucking it under your neck, actually, after a few moments. So just feel when you get to sit in front of your bolster, because you're probably anxious to get going here, have your belt in a big loop and scoop the loop around your feet and lower the belt down so it's at the back of the pelvi and use blocks. And this is a pretty serious piece of it as I'm learning it more and just living in my yoga practicing body, that I want to be careful of too much pressure here in my sacroiliac joint. So I don't want to try to jam my knees down. It's okay to have them low, but I want you to feel like there's a passage of circulation through the thighs that kind of flows, right? So if my knees were down on the ground, it's not going to circulate and flow back towards the groins, right, or towards the pelvic floor. Sand goes across the ribs. I highly encourage that you use it. And with that use of weight, we can now begin to strengthen our respiratory muscles. So arms releasing out. And if the release of the arms feels as if you're pressing right into the ribs, that's okay with the sand. So you will find a position for the arms that is pretty even, as much as you can tell. So the moment of inhalation, there's a weight on you, right? So as you inhale, you'll feel that you're lifting something. So it's weight training for your breathing muscles, not just your lungs, but your intercostals, and you might be wondering where else, but at the moment, as we center our focus inwards on the length of your inhale and the movement out of the exhalation, and meet the breath each time with a little curiosity. So having like a controlled exercise pace of breath is not very authentic, right? So you want to feel your kind of authentic breath. And after a few of those kind of winded, deep breaths, you'll likely just kind of putter through the next few and observe the heart rate. Observe where you are releasing in the hips. And bring your arms back behind you. So you'll stretch your hands back. You'll interlace your fingers. And I would let the interlace be pretty gentle. So nothing too much pressure in your fingers, but feel when you reach the hands together and you turn the hands inside out so you stretch the palms back. It likely goes into the sensation of the spine, right? I always find as my experience kind of deepens, I notice just a little more of this or a little more of that changes. So as you feel your changing experience from the moment before, work on the length of the upper body. I know we do a lot of like core, we want to crave that core length or feel long in the middle, but use this as a skilled moment to access that reach in the upper. It could get tiresome right after just a few moments here with the shoulders. So once it gets to be a little achy in the shoulder, right, you feel it accumulate. strength-wise in the shoulders, you don't have to hold the position longer, but feel when you separate the hands and the arms go back to previous shape, then come back to that lift and lower of your breath, meaning the sandbag. Take a few moments of experiencing your life force, right? Your breath pace, relaxing the facial muscles. Now, when you do slide the hands a little bit farther down, closer towards the mat, right alongside the mat, you almost can notice the shoulders moving up, like moving inwards. The position we don't like the shoulders to, well, they go most of the day. So let's take the sand away and unbuckle, and then kind of line up the circulation into the spine of the hip. So we'll bring the knees to point up so the belt is off of the hip band. I think of that kind of as a hip banding position. And then you'll get a ball. If you don't have a ball, you could use a block besides the upper outer left leg. Or you might find even putting like your sandbag right there next to your left leg. So it would be in the same position as I have the ball, upper outer left thigh. And as I bring the right foot up and cross the right ankle to the left knee, I lean the body weight over into that ball. Or again, the block is a little firm. So if you try to smush into the block, it might feel like it's cutting into you. So you want something that's kind of soft, but it gives a little bit of height. The outside of that left foot, though, it's on its side. So you want to relax the outside of your left foot on the ground as the leg is tilting to the left. And when you do hold onto that knee, create a circulation of interest for your right hip. So I'm going to leave my arms down below the heart just to focus on the hip. But when you hold onto that right leg, you are holding onto the wholeness of the leg, even if it's at the middle. So you can assert circulation into the hip. Okay, you decide how far the leg is crossing to the left, or you can work on moving the knee a little bit towards your center, towards the heart. That's a little challenging. So feel in the cross band of the hip. Right, we're just leading from the beginning pose now from the fibrous band of the hip into, from the first pose into a little deeper sense. Okay, now come back center, get a block. It's for everybody, right? We'll place the block so you can leave the ball there. If it's still there, it's not going to distract this. But my leg stays the same in this hinge. They call this more figure 4 pose. But the hands hold onto the block. I have my block at this mid setting. If you're pretty long armed, you're probably going to go flat because otherwise you're going to scrunch your shoulders too much. So you want to press at that block into that right leg and just feel that movement of the inner thigh gently. It might be really easy for you to do this, like no big deal. But sometimes working on structure and continuing to kind of iron out the specific directions of the joints. This is helpful to do the whole piece of the leg, right? Work through all the parts, polish it. We'll call this the polish piece. Release the pressure on that block. Change the crossing. Keep it simple. Uncross right foot, left foot up and over. Ball to the upper outer right leg. And then if I push in the sandbag or the block or the ball to the outer leg, then I don't really slide my right foot down. I try to still keep it oriented. But when I lean the body weight into that prop, you might feel that right foot responds. So try to let the weight shift to the outside of the foot. Hold on to that left knee with the right hand. And some of you might be kind of exuberant to get the left arm to stretch back. Some might be just completely content with arm beside you. Just depends on how you are in your bones today. Sensing maybe more focus on breath, but learning how to skillfully stretch into that low back waistline and hip. And if it's all like focused into that left hip, it gets so intense at the stretch. Taking slow, deep breaths. Just kind of working your way, moving the knee towards the right. Doesn't go very far, does it? The knee kind of stops and you feel the intensity, but going further would be kind of cruel sometimes on this one, so not forcing. It's too far if you get a lot of tingling, and it goes numb. We're going too far. So kind of recognize when you take away the grip with your hand and you add that block to that inner left leg. Now, if you're getting a little bit out of comfort with your back, remember you want to make sure you're really on that bolster, right? All the way to the tail bone. And when I press with that block, this actually feels kind of relief in my back. Pressing. So we're just doing very specific, so we feel competent in our body awareness. That's probably more important than doing all these new, interesting, creative sequences, but really starting to feel some competence in what we're doing. So with that position of pressure, if your knee is like kind of not pushing back into the block, it's like it's partially your will to do it, right? It's not like your knee's going to do anything unless you willfully give it some messaging, right? And some efforting. So just let the block do the work, right? Just let it push. You don't need to respond back. Don't do too much. Don't do too little. Find what pressure direction setting of the block ought to be for you. And then as we release the pressure, we're going to actually slip the block under the pelvis. So uncross the left foot. And I'm just going to leave my block in my lap here, but I want to be sure that that's a new one, huh? That blanket on the top is gone because we don't want to cause more crunch in the neck or more rounding. Not a good idea ever. So we take the belt, my belt's under, lift up, and then I just slide the block flat under the back of my pelvi. I like that word today, pelvi. Okay, so we set our seat there, and it might feel so easy, like not much of a stretch change, but when you reach a leg down at a time, if you have a wall space on this one, it's kind of nice. Mine is a little mere dabble on the wall. I can't quite push it, but if you can coordinate that. You might like that feeling. It's like it's resistance into the bones, right? So anything where we're pushing and the bones are going to feel that, it's a little resistance. So anything helps. Any resistance helps. Okay. So we add sand on the thigh lids. And with that support on the tops of the legs, right? It's not on the belly, it's a little below. And just get a feel for the sinking of the sand. The sand just takes over right away. It doesn't need any, you don't need to push a button on the sandbag to work. It just takes its effort into the bones. So the arms are centered. I like the variation when you take a belt on this one and reach overhead, but they're both okay. I can feel a balance either way with the arms passive or the arms a little integrated into the shape, which is holding a belt. Very generous hold, reach it wide, and move it back over. And you can feel this interesting movement of the shoulder connection into the back muscles when you reach, and then the chest. Oh man, that upper back area into the shoulders is kind of a wild little matrix of muscular, bigger muscles, smaller ones, smaller places in the shoulder. Okay, so if you can experiment with movement of breath. If it's all high in the chest, can you feel the breath in the belly, massaging the organs? Relax the eyes. Now feel where there's a reach down through the legs, whether there's a wall or not. It's not that critical, but I want you to feel the legs reach down. Okay, now let go of the belt and bring the hands down to the sand and walk the feet in. Now, as the sand goes away, let's have it, for all of you, you can probably put it to the left side of your mat. This way it won't cover the image of what you're seeing that we do. So it'll be easier if it's on the left side for you though. So press down into your feet. Now, when you lift your hips, lift a mirror, just a mirror lifting. And so there's an engagement in the thighs, and really important, right, for our back musculature. Well, it's the glutes that are doing the work here. But slide the block away, and can you get a feel of lowering the pelvis down? Now, if you have the ball, where's our props? You'll place it between the knees. If you have a block, you'll place the block between the knees. They'd be the same. The spacing would be the narrow spacing for the block. Okay, and then squeeze into it. And the block is just fine for this one because you want something that is pretty solid that you can push in. If you've got a ball, you have to kind of work extra to input that muscle, kind of the labor into the muscles. So it probably moved away from like the glute muscles, and now it's a little bit more thigh band. You can feel that. So you can kind of scoot your seat a little bit downwards, but be aware we're trying to sit up. So when the arms go back, you can feel that thread of reach, good. You can feel the motion. And then I want you to let your arms reach forward, lift your head, and then notice, okay, now can I squeeze the ball or block? And then reach for your legs, get a good hold of them, slide your feet forward, this is critical. And then when you pull up to lift onto your sit bones, you gotta find out where those are. Right, when you get a seat. And they're a little more mysterious, I feel, when the knees are like this than if you're sitting cross-legged, because that's our normality of movement. This isn't like, unless you do a lot of squatting motion, it's a little odd here to feel the hip bones. So I want you to make sure your bolster's close to your back. So if it slid away, don't reset your blankets, just pull the bolster in so it's touching you. So you have the security. Make sure it's there so it just touches your back. And then lean back so you can touch onto the bolster. This is key. Squeeze and then come up. If you don't have the ball, you don't have to worry about squeezing. You just kind of hug the block. Lean back. Arms are straight in front. Breathe in. Exhale, sitting up. Inhale, leaning back. And your feet kind of stay still. Squeeze to come up. That's kind of a funny idea because when you come up, you're exhaling, and at the same time, you're squeezing the ball. I know, can you scratch your head and rub your belly at the same time? Okay, last attempt at doing this correctly. Take one slow experience here. So feel on your back, breathe in. The belly kind of lifts, and then as you exhale, the ball, you're squeezing into the object. Okay, and there's a lot of like gripping rays of muscles, right? Everything's kind of seized up. So once you remove between whatever's between the knees, you'll bring your hands back. So the elbows are probably going to point back, your shoulders are going to roll forward. Step your feet as wide as your mat and let your knees, and maybe not quite that wide, but let your knees go side to side so you're massaging into the glutes. If this feels like it's awkward for you to get a massage into the glutes, then let your feet get a little bit wider. That always helps. Wider feet helps. You can lean back further. It's an interesting band of massage into the hip here. So as you land side to side, you're going to eventually get center. If you have a ball, you get that. If you have a block, you're going to need maybe two on this one. But you're going to lean back to that left side, the left hip down, right hip is up. And you're going to, let's see, if you have a ball, you need only one block. If you got a block, keep them both near. So let's please turn the bolster across so it's horizontal. This is where you want your sandbag by your left knee. Okay. So we'll take a side sage, and the blanket setup needs to be pretty bulky. I think that's going to be the key, is just bulk it up. So if this is sort of enough, and if you lie down your side of your head and it just doesn't seem helpful, I would start with the bigger wad so that you will have more comfort in your neck. Okay? So the block goes behind the blankets. The ball goes inside the right thigh and or the block. Some of us don't use anything there. It depends on your knee. If it's a little edgy on your knee to have it stretching back, I just use something on the inside. And as you add your sand to your hip, it could be lengthening, could be horizontal. But when you reach back with your right arm, yeah, this feels pretty nice. This would be almost one that I would probably get a couple sandbags out if I could. If you do have a couple, you could put one on the hip and then one on the ribs. You could stack two closer down to the thigh and the hip, so they could both be to support your hip bone, right? The circulation into the bone density. And then once the arm is up and over, relax your breath. Sometimes to relax, it takes a kind of stiff breath. And then you can hear that awareness and try to reduce the struggle. And the props help so much, right? Just to let us lean in. Good. Yeah, the sand looks good. So you can get a feel for the stretch through the waist by letting your body really just be releasing, right? So if you feel like it rolls you a little bit back, you want gravity to have you. That's so key here. So it doesn't matter how it looks, it's about the spaces that you're opening up. Again, back to the pathways. In the side spaces, both of them. And if the finality of this position for your completion feels like there's a little hold in the neck, let the weight of your head relax into the blankets. I could feel like you're actually trying to push the blankets with your head. And then relaxing the neck. Now the arm might get tired, so I would just let the arm come back, maybe open the chest towards the ceiling for a few moments. If you do that and the neck feels kind of pinned on the left side, you can let your head kind of roll on the back of your head, and that can feel really good, especially into the chest. And take some care when you move the head back over to the left, slide the sand away. You're going to explore a little bit of spine kind of wave movement. So when you come out of this pose on this one side, before the next side, let's turn towards the back of our space. So we're going to be on hands and knees. If you don't like the pressure on your knees, just use a blanket under that. It's no big deal. You just grab your blanket, it's under your knees, and a little easier, no pressure. So we keep the bolster about the same. I go kind of back and forth on moving it around because I don't want it to block my ability to use my arms, but sometimes it's actually helpful to feel the bolster touching your arms. It's kind of interesting. There's whole Iyengar sequences where they use like pushing into the bolster for these shapes. So it's interesting for the skin, but feel the fingers spread out. The toes can spread too. And then round your back. So you're moving the chin towards the chest just as much as you're moving your lower back. And then press wide through the fingers, arch the spine, inhale, chin forward, eyes stretch up. Stretch your eyes. Okay, and then come back to that cat pose, hollow through the corridor of the waist. And kind of feel, what do you do with your stomach band, right? Do you pull and kind of manage the movement? Or can you actually have a ritual of moving everything with the arch, right? So the abdomen naturally stretches and then it relaxes when you round your back. Okay, now toes are under maybe. Lift up the knees and alternate bending them and take an active approach to your inverted V position, right? It's a dog pose pattern, but we won't declare it that so we can play with it. So you can alternate bending your knees. And then as the toes are, well, they're pretty relaxed here. This is where I kind of differ on the bolster issue. I like to walk the hands a little bit away from the bolster. I like to touch my head to the bolster. This is key for me. But if your head doesn't touch down, you're still doing a great job. Right? Just keep in mind, this is practice, and the body lengthens. But if the feet are still alternating the bend, that's okay. It might feel really good for your calves to kind of massage into the leg muscles. You're inverting your body, so you're reversing the blood flow to the heart and the brain. The shoulders might be getting pretty heated. Yeah, really feel that stretch from the buttocks towards the heels. Okay, now lift the heels a little bit, lower down the knees. And if you've got the blanket here, you're going to move it back to the other side with the other one. Join the blankets. And let's set up for side stage on the right hip. Okay, so we're going to lean over to that right side. We're going to move the hip down, take the ball or block on the inside of the left leg, and then use the reach of the waist to the right, and then the sand on the left. And you can monitor the circulation right through the spine here kind of nicely. Side poses are beneficial even as much for the back area, the lumbar, the spine, as much as what you kind of descriptively feel it stretching, which is the side. So it's usually kind of the yoga prescribed area if you've got back issue, pains, discomfort, do side stretches. And these are all restorative, so there's nothing strenuous. you can attain this pretty easily without even the arm reaching if you want to do a passive stretch sometime. And ease your back, just lying on the side, bending the knees, and letting the weight of your head relax. And you just feel where the ribs touch down. Lengthen the inhale. And relax on the out breath. So you might feel a little difference on the second side with the range of motion. You might not even notice that until it's mentioned. Like, oh, there is a little range of motion difference, and maybe the armpit, maybe the neck feels easier on one side. Maybe the side that you usually sleep more on is just stretched out more. You know, as that length occurs in the waist, we're going to work towards kind of massaging into movements that massage into the back, the hip, and the waist. So as you release the arm, then you really do have an option here to move the block to the side. And then the sand, yeah, what I'm encouraging you to do is just slide it off. And then this whole pattern with the legs, you can tell the right leg is the what's pulling up to your bolster, but they both have kind of even experience at working, not just the legs, but the core body. So we're going to kind of keep that when we come up. So come up by lowering down to the right side of the ribs. Like, let it be slow. Bring the left knee towards the right knee, and then coming up, okay? So let's take our bolster to the front of our mat, and we're actually going to move the blankets behind us to sit on, okay? I don't think you might use a ball coming up, but you'll have your blankies. And I would stack them nicely so you have a really good solid height. You don't want it to be too wonky. No wonky blankets. I want you to have a little mat behind you. I know some of us are in a comfy place in our home, so if you go off of your mat, you're on a carpet, so it's not a big deal. But you want to have a little mat behind you. Okay. There's no mouse in here yet, so there's no little mouse in here. It's gonna be my little research project after class. Okay, make it a little house in the backyard, the tiny side yard. Okay, so bend the right knee and let the left leg stretch out. So moments ago we had a right knee bending, right? It was pulled up. So this is kind of similar, but you're sitting, so it's a tiny bit different. It's different in your back. Okay, so let's add some sand here. Let's put our sand on our right thigh. Add it if you have it. And if you put that down on the top of the right thigh, so it's kind of a hip hugger on the top of my right thigh, kind of hugs around my well, it doesn't really hug my hip, but it's closely wound around my leg. And then if I sit up, this is a very elementary variations today. I'm trying to focus on specific alignment. So when you sit up, if you get a feel of your sitting bones and kind of the shaping of how you lift up off of the pelvis, try to get a feel for height. Now, if your knee is up, like your knee doesn't touch down the right side, I would put something under it, and the ball might be too much, right? Because I'm kind of close, but so I'm just going to use a little bit of it. You could use a flat block. You could go without and see what happens. If you have a little extra towel or pillow, right, you could use that. You know, but you'll notice if the ball is actually interfering with your stretch in a few moments. So you can always just let it roll. But grab a hold of the short end of your bolster. And with that perch, right, you're sitting up on your perch. You're going to lean forward and experiment with the movement of breath and the shifting of weight in your legs, not just your arms. Your arms are clear, they're touching something, they're pushing a little bit, but there's certainly the idea of weight in your legs. Your left foot might try to turn in a bit, so you just want to keep flexing the foot. Just do the best you can. If it pivots in, you might use the right foot as a stopper for the left leg, right? So it kind of stops it from rolling on the top, but it doesn't, you can't get your foot down to your calf. You probably could. But lean into it and take a few more moments as you try to approach a little deepening of that forward bend. Okay, now come back up and place the bolster down, and now carefully lean back and try to bring that left foot up on top of the bolster. So just getting that there could be a little bit tough, right? So just get a feeling of your thigh muscle pivoting, and then blocks under hands. Now, if you're already in this kind of challenging shape, to get your blocks could be tricky. But see if you can use your blocks under your hands and reach the torso. Of course, your back is already folding into the position, but see if you can you get less forward bend appearance if you work with your torso lifting, right? Otherwise, you're rounding your back the whole time. So I'm just going to be as basic as I can for my back strength. I'm going to try to keep upright, lean forward so I stretch my hip. So if you don't feel this much in your left leg, I'm sure if you go farther forward, you will. And you don't need to pull your foot closer, but this is another tactic would be I pull my foot closer on my bolster. But that's just a lot of challenge for me, it just challenges different leagues of muscle patterns. So I'm not sure I want to go there. So I just let it kind of stretch down to the bolster and go for it. Okay, now let's take a gentle twist today. So you'll come back, you'll turn left. If you need a block under your hand, use one. If it's, kind of on your fingertips, that's probably okay. But right hand to left knee, just below the knee, and then work on that seated twist. So simple lifting heart, good, and rotate. And when you're turning to the left, try to keep the right knee moving out and down, right? And if you notice, the ball's kind of inhibiting that process, then you might slide it out, and it could feel pretty good. So you're feeling that inner thigh stretch on the right leg and the twist. Now we've done this twist path with the leg crossed over, so this left foot would be on the other side of my right knee, and that could still feel pretty soothing to you. So if you want to do further work, I still think this is enough. You could take your left leg, cross it over the right, kind of move your bolster in front. It's a little bit more of a compact turn. And this might feel actually good after doing that last one. This feels safe for me. My back is happy. I have some width into my back, so it's not, into a twisted pretzel. Almost. Okay, and then get a feel. If your foot is on the bolster, just keep it there. That might be just fine. Okay, take a moment or two with the movement of the ribs. They probably don't go much farther after the initial twist. Okay, and noticing how the breath is kind of stiff, right? You can only do so long of an inhale here. Okay, now the breath will get a little more unraveled. So as you come back forward, uncross that right, that crossover on the right, if your foot was over the right leg, take the foot back on the bolster, and then let's take that left leg back, and we'll be in right leg pigeon, okay? So again, we're trying to get very specific here into the right hip, and if this seems to kind of pinch on that right side, what I would do, especially if you're against a wall like I am here, I just pivot my bolster so it's easier for me to lean into it. You could have the bolster straight in front of you, spine-wise, and bring your elbows to the floor on the sides of it. That's kind of nice to do too, but I got a wall too close, so it's not going to happen. But when I lean into that elbow band, right? Think of the elbows, right? They're kind of freestyle most of the day. They're not really banded together. So right now you're kind of using both of them to press, stimulate the strength in your back, kind of leaning into the hip. Let your head lower down. Yeah, this feels pretty good. It's a nice balance for the lower back as well. Okay, now before you come out, feel how your pelvis tilts, right? So this place of movement in the hip, it's almost like you're propped into the right sitting bone and the pelvis is tilting back. So I want you to feel where the weight is on that right thigh. It's almost like you're trying to move downwards, but the pelvis might still be tipping back, like your sitting bones towards the floor. See if you can just stretch straight back with the seat. Just feel if that moves at all. It really will stretch your hip, but it may be blocked and kind of stiffened up. It's especially an important time of year, right, to get the flexibility continued. So when you stop doing so much outside, you can take care of your body. Feeling that importance here. So come back and now swing the left leg forward. Easy go. That does it here. You just bring your right leg out. This will be a little quicker pattern on this side because you kind of know. You have a little memory. Really easy memory. Place your sand on the left side. Get your bolster and reach the bolster and lean in. Right, so experiment, since this will be abbreviated forward bend with the bolster. We don't want to overdo the forward bend. So it's a kind of a yoga problem is there's a little more stretch of the backside in general. So I'm trying to get us to lubricate the hip and a little bit more of the legs and the upper legs today. So when you lean forward, you might not even get to feel much, a little bit of hamstrings today, but it won't be a whole lot. So we get into the hip. Now, when you tilt, feel when you push into the bolster, maybe nod your head a little bit side to side. And then as I come up, I really focus on the crown of my head. So very center and top, lifting towards the sky. And then I try to feel my sitting bones and I'm lifting up out of the waist. And then lower the bolster. Now it'd be easy for you just to kind of round your back in a heap, but feel if you can still stay up. Slide that right foot. So if you need to lean back, I always find this to be a good sequencing, is I lean back, and then I bend the right knee and I scoop my foot in. So everything should not have a catch. You don't want your post sequencing to have catches into the joint. So try to make things as smooth as you can. Knee is out, right knee. And lift up and get the blocks. They can't be high enough for this one. I feel like I could use a chair right here. So if you're ever feeling like, even the class, this is the day of the week we don't use a chair. Sometimes we do, but you need to add that in so you have a little more height and just use it, We won't hear it if you rumble around to get a chair. So when I lean, right, I want to feel the experience in my hip. So let's change this one tad. So we have a mini moment here forward. Now, come back up to center seat and then turn to your right and left hand to right knee. And breathe in. And feel if there's rotation. So of course we want this lower back area to stay kind of like you have a brace on, right? This is not going to take the twist in the chunky vertebrae at the base. So what you want to work with is the vertebrae connected to the ribs does the turn. So that's going to strengthen right into your breathing muscles. And then turn back forward, come back to that forward bend. We're changing it up a little bit. Take a few more moments. It's about 45 seconds, so a little bit longer here. And you might take the blocks forward. You might keep them really close to the center so you're not rounding very much. And now experiment with how the right knee is kind of out. Feel how it's moved away from the center. It's certainly not pointing up to the ceiling. Okay, now this will be the second twist. So when you come back with your hands on your legs, I know some of us do take the full twist, so we like to bring the right foot over the left knee. Now, if you're not going to do that, you'll leave it the way it is, and you'll take your turn to the right like we just did. But if you're going to add the crossover, that little more advanced, you might have to push your bolster a little bit away so it's not in your way of your knee centering, and then help the right leg over the left. And you can feel that you lift up through the heart, you turn to the right, left arm to right leg, and just be a little aware of where do you twist, right? Do you twist in the middle, or are you still kind of pressing your back to make the rotation? So that's why it might be nice not to have so much pressure in your right hand behind you, because you tend to lean down and tug on your back. So feel when you turn, feel where the chest is up, and you don't have to make this like a tug of war with your arm and your leg. Focus on the inner lift. The left leg is heavy, and rotate. Now I feel like I'm pretty comfortable. I'm not overdoing it. I can feel like I can go a little farther, but I'm just going to see what time gives me here. Okay, now unwind, and we're going to take pigeon. So I want you to kind of prep that in your body movement. So you move the sand away, and you'll take that right leg back. And when you lean into it, definitely get your props there, your bolster. And so what I mentioned with if it was forward, let's say you're not very close to the wall, you just happen to be lucky. You could have your elbows on the ground on the side and like rest your head on the bolster. This just feels great. You can make this work. It's nice. Yeah, we'll work on this side because I slid my blankets back. But this is okay too. And if this feels like, oh, it's too much of a dent in my back, then don't do it, right? Let your spine lengthen. So some of us don't do poses like child's pose very often because it hurts the knees a little bit. So some of these are nice to do because you're still getting the benefits of like a child's pose for the heart, right? And the brain. And you're resting your head down. So if this works, if it's just a little iffy for your knee, you can always make your blanket under that left seat higher. Right? You could fold it up a little higher. Just even doing that helps quite a bit for the knee. You can use your ball. You can sit on the ball or a block. But if I do that and I lean forward, there's a little bit more space around my knee. Just getting your hip higher. Okay, so taking a few more moments here, let the heart relax. Yeah, the challenge you might have if your elbows are on the bolster is that the heart just can't really restore as well because you're pressing, but it's good too. So relaxing the breath and feeling the back space open. Okay, now this has everything to do with the legs. So when we come up and we slide the hands back, okay, we're going to be shifting to use the wall in just a moment. So I want you to move your bolster off to the side. I think we'll use it for a little bit. And let your weight shift into that left hip. So you're going to be grounded to get to the wall. I don't want you to stand up and then jump over the wall, but swing the right leg forward, and then you're going to turn. Some of you have your wall right at the base of your mat. I know that's how we've set up. But if you don't, you're going to bring your mat to a wall space. If you need to reorient, what you'll need is your blanket, just one, and you'll need a block set. And if you have a ball, you could have it, but you'll need your sand and a bolster. That's it at the wall. You don't need your belt. You don't really need your ball, but we'll find out. So add the blanket under your knees. Be sure it's enough under your knees, but it's not going to be like all the way unrolled or unfolded, because then you're gonna, I don't want you to trip. So have your blanket in a little quarter fold, and then separate your hands as if they were going to be on top of each other anyway, huh? Separate your hands wide and feel when there's that width with the hands on the edges of your mat, and you stretch your hips back like you would do child's pose, but we're just not going to crease our knees that much. So feel that span. If your head touches down, super. If it doesn't, you're still super. But feel that reach of the kind of the wings of the back. Okay, get your wings kind of set into there. Okay, now when you get the feel here, this feels good enough to stay for a bit. I want you to let the weight flush out and spread into the fingers, spreading wide. And then when you start to come up, flow the body weight forward into your hands and let the hips stretch down and reach through the spine. You're going to feel the front of the spine a little more here. Feet push into the wall. And then come back and try to get that same awareness when you reach back. It doesn't have to be exactly imprinted with your head down, but feel the reach of the hips back. And then let your spine round a bit, chin tucks, and then move your hips straight down and the chest reaching forward. Now, if this is achy for your back, it's just too much flexibility to move through, you can make it a shorter span. So your hands can be closer in, and then it's just easier. It is easier that way, I find. But I like to try to push it out so I can work on, in general, right, working on circulation, reducing inflammation. I mean, just working it might feel like there's inflammation, but I imagine you're going to help your circulation by experimenting. And it's slow. It's almost like you got to do something else slow, isn't it? So taking one more time, rounding, and that rounding is interesting. What I like to add in with this is circling the hips a bit. So if you feel like doing that, you can come back in center and imagine like a beam of light coming down from the navel towards the ground. You're trying to make circles, right? So you're just circling the hips. It's nothing where you have to push all the way forward, but just circling a couple times each direction is good to kind of finish this pattern. And it might feel like the circular pattern is not quite smoothed out, but it loosens up the hip. And then once you get back to center, hand span, make sure you got some blocks in front of you so they're on your inside layer of your mat. They don't have to be perfect, but they're definitely on your mat. Lift up your hips. How are you going to do that? Well, you can lift your knees up, or you don't have to. You can just lift up your hips in table pose. So we're either going to be in table like this. Some of you might not want to lift your hips or your knees up, I mean. Some of us will be in more of a down dog. And I want you to let your hands press the floor away, and the head is centered between the arms. Okay, take a few moments. Heels could be up at the wall. Mine feel really good at the wall. I like this experience. I can put my heels really flat at the base, and they don't feel very flexible there. So I'd rather just work, because my last pose today is going to be legs up the wall, and I'll get my calves fully flushed out by then. So take one more moment here with that reach of the hips. Head is down. Okay. Now, as you move your weight into your hands, you're going to keep the knees up if you can. If not, they're on the ground, on the blanket. Step the right foot forward and take your blocks in under your hands and make sure those blocks are high enough. Just go high with the blocks, even if you're a really tall person. I don't think that really is a difference, right, for flexibility as much as some of the short people might think. With the blocks on this one, people need them. So feel if your left foot is a little bit up at the wall. Just notice. That feels good. If it feels better with the heel down, I can't get it down all the way, so I'm just kind of stuck. So feel when that knee stretches forward. Right? The heel could be lifting. And then I want you to lower the back knee to the blanket and be curious of moving your blocks back. Be careful on the wrist, especially that inside band here. I would be careful to the thumb. So you might let the fingers pads touch the block so it feels like you're kind of making a funny gesture with your hands here. You sometimes call it spidering the fingers, but I'm not clear about that yet. I haven't gotten that consciousness in what it means to me, but stretch the front of the left thigh deeply. So this doesn't mean I drop down to my head towards the knee, but I stretch the front of the left thigh. I could scoot my right foot forward. Oh, that's going to make it more interesting, huh? You got the wall, that's helping. If it feels like it's pressing your knee, really push the foot into the wall. Use the foot into the wall so you're transferring that pressure. Okay, now take a reverse lunge. Just knee down, right foot lifts up the toes, stretch the undercurrent of this whole right leg. This feels so good. The hands are on the blocks, you can tip them down. You can go all the way to the flat block, maybe. This one could be extreme. So let the spine keep extending and flex the right foot, toes back. Yeah, the hamstring hasn't gotten a whole lot today. So that's nice to get that stretch to the back line of the leg. Okay, now if the right foot can get a little more passive, so not so much of that flex, edgy stuff, feel if that changes anything of the leg, right? If it's less fried, it doesn't feel like it's on edge. And then just let the right knee start to move itself so it's reaching a little bit forward. Okay, and I want you to work on this length of the undercurrent of the leg, the right leg. So it's tricky here. We're going to lift up the back knee. I'm pretty stepped out on this one, meaning I'm not sure if I'm going to step into both feet. I'm going to step up and sit on my rear. It's pretty far extent. So I'm going to slide my right foot in so I know I don't end up on my tush. Step the left foot forward. Take a full forward bend. Let your hands be either on your blocks or on the hands on the elbows. This feels so nice to hold my elbows and let my spine just dangle. Feel where there's space at the knees. Yeah, don't kind of scrunch yourself together here. Just feel what moves forward and down. Breathing. Neck is long. Okay, lower the hands to the blocks. I'm going to bring them up high again because as the right foot steps back, yeah, you're going to take some care through the joint. So I feel the left knee forward, the right heel reaches behind, and I'm a little high. It's a higher lunge, right? It's not knee down. So the musculature in the legs is all warming up for the stretch. So can you look back to your right thigh and just be sure that the hips are, well, as far as you can tell, the knee is pointing more downwards than it is turning out. Left knee is forward. And then skillfully feel as that right knee lowers to the blanket. Keep the right foot to the wall and then reach the front of the thigh. Some people like to have their knee that's on the ground at the edge of the blanket if there's knee discomfort. I've heard that over and over again, just on what people do and feel like, I haven't found that to be extremely helpful for me, but it's less pressure, right? If my knee is not right, pushing into the blanket, it's a little on the edge. It's a little easier, but I still feel just fine with the knee to the blanket. So you're going to work with that back leg, trying to almost lose the focus of effort and try to get the thigh to stretch down. Like you were going to aim into the splits, right? If you were going to do that, your left leg would slide forward, but we're just not up to that today. So as the thigh is stretching on the back leg, your work is on reaching the torso into an arch. Yeah, this feels good. Good for the hip. Okay, now as you approach coming to the reverse lunge, if this one's feeling really helpful for you, more therapeutic than another pose, then you can stay with this versus the reverse lunge. I don't feel like this is as therapeutic for me because I'm pretty mobile in my back line, less mobile in my front line this way. So you choose, but if this starts to feel good and you want some balance, then you just take it, right? You let the body absorb the change of circulation. You adapt with your breath. And that left foot, you can just kind of feel it flexing. You can feel it relaxing. Maybe it crackles. You move the foot. And if that foot is kind of neutral, that could be really good too. You're not efforting as much. The right foot still pushes the wall. You might have to use your right hand to kind of help slide the leg forward so you're lengthening. Okay, good work. Give it a few more moments. The foot doesn't have to be super active flexing. It can just be somewhere in between. Hopefully you feel the back of the leg kind of like the button turned it on and it's stimulating. Stimulating the bladder meridian, right? The whole back line from the back of the big toe, right? Undercurrent all the way up to the back. That meridian. So when you do slide, this time instead of kind of aiming forward, I want us to get towards the wall even more. So we're going to bring that left knee back. Good job. And then take your blocks to the side and just simply use your hands to guide your knees off the blanket and then take the blanket to the back of your mat so your feet are to the wall and make it really low so the blanket's flat. It's in it's a big square. It's not so much a quarter fold. Now let's use a bolster. So our feet are to the wall. And if you've got a ball, get it. If you've got a block, I think you should use it on this one. So we don't want to be without something between our knees. So when we lower onto the back, you're going to kind of smooth out the low back. And some people do that by the action of pushing on the belly, but it doesn't seem to be an intelligent thing to do to the stomach in these therapeutic ideas here. So these modalities. So it's the opposite for this version. So I have the ball between the knees. It could be a block, narrow. So you just use the narrow edge of the block between the knees. And then as you squeeze the item, and the block will make it work. You'll work a little different with the block. You want to squeeze in. So the muscle fibers on the legs, feel like the inner thighs are about 70% at the most working. Okay. Now when your knees kind of go in, the lower back frame kind of widens. It's pretty minute, but it's definitely a skillful motion. Now lower the feet to the bolster. Okay. If you feel too close for comfort, you can scoot back with your blanket. push into your feet, lift up your hips, stretch your arms overhead, and you might even do this drawbridge sequence, relaxing your eyes. So when I lift and lower, I'm smoothing down through the spine. Yeah, that time surprised me. My spine was down with my arms at the same time, almost, which is almost never happens for me. It's usually my arms come down much, much slower. So let the spine lengthen. Now, if you can feel the hardware of the back when you lift, you can feel like the rib plate, and then the possible option of lifting up between the shoulder blades is what I want you to try for, like you were going into a shoulder stand kind of version. You're getting your circulation up high. And then when you lower down, when you're starting to lower, see if you can keep the tailbone scooping under. Be careful with it. You got that spacer between the knees. And just do the right amount of scooping. You got to feel what works for your muscles. And lower down. Okay, let's take one more. So we'll lift up the hips. If you're already moving at a faster pace than this, maybe you'll do two more. Depends on your pacing today. But feel the spine massage on this bridge pose. Now, we used to do this one, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago. I had the habit of teaching this with the feet at the wall. And we would lift the hips up and lower down. I felt I was too slippy. I slipped too much with it. I just didn't feel like I grabbed the ground with my back. So you can always revert back to that. It's okay. They're both taught often. Now, once that spine lands, I want you to get a block. If you already have a block, actually, let's remove what's between the knees. It just will make life easier. Lift up the hips and slide a block set. So you got to have two. We're going to have two at the second setting under the back of your pelvis. Even if you're a big time bridger and you can go higher, just stay at this middle zone here. And in the spinal today, I want us to kind of keep it soothing for our back. So you can have your legs this pattern, knees pointed. I prefer the legs stretching down to the wall, but you might already be set up where the knees stay really bent to do that. So you can probably kind of scoot your blanket back, scoot your hips just a little, and you'll accomplish this one. This is one of my favorite pose patterns, is the bolster at the wall, my shoulders rolling down and under. The bolster is supporting that the legs don't crash. And then the blocks, of course, assume responsibility for the pelvis. Assume responsibility with the arms down and shoulders down and in towards the spine. Okay? Let the spine center. Now, if this blanket feels too low, I want you to try to work with a low blanket so that you're not cramming your chin so close that your neck is flexing. Feel a regular amount of rhythm in the neck here. And then as the palms relax, they try to turn towards the ceiling though. You want the palms open. Maybe curled in because that's a relaxed hand. Like a baby hand, you know. And then feel the belly move with the breath. Now, if you have feet pushing, you know, play with that interaction with the wall, how you press, how it resounds into the bones. And, you know, when you stand upright, it's kind of a different connectivity we have when we walk around. And I think we take it for granted a little bit, the earth, the connection, the bones. So you just focus on that sometimes, you know, I think that's nice to do. Just feeling how the grounding under your feet moves into the bones. Okay, now as you slide your feet on top of the bolster, unless you already stood this way, this is fine too. And as you push down to your feet, feel how you push the bolsters right at the wall, so you don't have to worry about losing it. But when you lift up, you're going to slide the blocks away, and we're going to let the spine lower down. And once the vertebrae meet, there might be a pocket at the base of the spine that's still kind of lifted. So I want you to release that. You walk your feet away from the bolster and then push the bolster with the foot. Probably both feet have to help out with this movement. You're going to navigate and push the bolster to the right side. Take your blanket under your head, slide it so you can fold it one more time so your neck has a little more balance. And be sure that you're not so close to the wall you can't extend the leg. So you might have to scoot back. But we'll take a crossover. So we got a couple more poses, but we're going to move the left leg over to the right. And I want you to have your sand if possible. It isn't helpful every time you do this though. So what I've noticed is that when I put the ball, if you don't have a ball, I won't even worry about it if you don't have a ball, because the ball is pretty helpful here. And the block would just nag your back, it would just point into it. But if the ball is kind of semi-supportive, you want to lean into it a little more. That's some days that feels kind of nice. So I'm kind of tracking my hip. It feels good. Now my knee is not entirely down, so what helps is my sand. I put it on my outer leg. Sometimes people feel fine with this without a sandbag. If you already feel like this is good, you don't need to add to it, then I wouldn't, right? If you feel fine, less is maybe more here, okay? Add the sand to the outer left leg, open out the left arm, roll your head to the left. Open up through the chest, breathing. It's pretty minimal as far as efforting and pressure with the joints, but feel where you can make the condition more comfortable. If you need to bend the knee on the bottom, the right leg, I'm bending mine a little more. And if I bend my right knee more, bring my foot closer up towards my seat, just a little bit, it gives more ease spiraling from my hip joint into my back. You know, all these little bending patterns are just good kind of motionary, easeful, and let that spine feel a gentle rotation. This probably moves more into your lower thoracic, in towards that chamber between the two. Breathing. Let's give it another few moments. We're doing about a minute on each hip. At least a minute, timing them. Someone's got to be the timer. Okay, now if you slide that sand away, you know switching is it's what's next, but I would be cautious. Just let the knee move into the center after you move the sand, move the ball, and just get a feeling of the back of the pelvis centered, feet down, and then move the bolster to the left side and take it slow. Feel when the bolster goes over, scoot. I like to scoot a little bit to the right side of my mat. I get everything kind of flushed right. And then as the left knee relaxes, swing the right leg over and taking that ball to the back zone and feel how the waist moves. Now it's like waist is great to feel waist stretching and twisting. Sometimes you can, put the sand on if you like that. But like feeling your twist from the waist, right, versus like spine. I can really get my sand there. Feeling from the belly directional might be nice for you. One side, the knee might go down easier. And it might even feel like, oh, this is just an easier crossover for you. So there's always something individual about this whole experience. It's nice to do a home practice, I think, for that, just to kind of be in your space and feel that you can sample different versions, or you can do your own thing as well. You know, feeling where the body weight is back, where it's twisted. You know, where your ribs go right, your legs go to the left, but your bottom leg, left leg, underneath you, it's probably veering a little to the right, from the knee down to the foot. So noticing all these little kind of these entangled shapes internally to massage in the base with the belly and the breath. Slower and more meditative. And let's go real slow to get to our final pose now. So I want you to still feel how this crossover is. I'm going to merge the poses, sliding a ball away. And some of us need to go sandbag, then ball, I think. So you have to kind of be intuitive, like, okay, what feels like it should go first? For me, it feels like the ball and then the sand. But you know, that sand is going to be near the wall for your last pose. So you might just kind of get it a little farther down towards the wall. And then take some care. You might roll to your left with your knees in a fetal position. You might roll on your back, knees to chest. Feel how you're going to transition, and be very careful. When you come up, you can use your bolster at the wall and the blanket and the sand. So you don't need more than that. The wall is the big prop, isn't it? But when you add your blanket, make sure that's the same height. You've got still that neck, that curvature. And then when you get upside down, I will get really close with your rear to the wall, right? So you want to get your tush obnoxiously close to the wall for this one. So it's kind of like you're on edge right now. You got your sitting bones to the wall. Your idea of sitting bones at the wall is pretty dramatic, really, isn't it? So you try to scoot back. You roll a shoulder under. You have to be on one side of the bolster, so the other side looks like it's going to flip up. And then roll. Get into a nice cannonball. And that's super helpful, I think. It helped my back a lot to get that direction. But like a whole yoga class in a nanosecond there. Sometimes it goes like that. One little moment can be like an icing on the cake. So when I have the lift, I can add my stand. There are days where this feels just fine without, and I don't want to add that challenge of getting it up and all that. But likely the sandbag is improving your breathing, it's improving your grounding, it's improving the bones. It's enough little extra that it's probably worth it. It also keeps you kind of still, right? You're just kind of staying with the sand, grounding. So this is our final pose. So that's good, we made it. So get a feel of the back muscles, and there might be a mirror arch for some of us who've done this a long time. We don't really feel the definition in the arch, but it certainly lifts the hips up. So that must arch the back when you're upside down. And I don't feel a big arch, but it's happening. So let that arch support the movement of the diaphragm. So you're strengthening the breathing muscle by being inverted. And the arms could be resting on to the side and your hands on your core. Feel your breath. It can be so nice to feel your body breathing sometimes. You can have your arms beside you. But if you're a little cold, you probably want them on you right now. Just kind of keep supporting your body. however it's most therapeutic is best. And rest the eyes back into the brain and return the body to a place of balance and inner peace. And feel that flush through the legs, right? That distribution of circulation down into the pelvis, into the abdomen. We'll take just a few more moments here. So if your feet feel like they're trying to push, see if you can let the knees soften a little bit so there's less efforting. Okay, now shift the feet from the wall, bend the knees, and then very carefully let the sand go away. So you could toss it overhead. You could carefully guide it off your feet. And then feel the approach of the knees bending towards you and your rib cage getting that little pressure. And I would encourage that a little bit, letting the ribs have that massage of the legs, massaging the digestive tract. This gives you a lot of that because you're lifted on a bolster, and so it's just pressing into that tract. If you don't do a lot of squatting, right, you're not going to massage that area very much on its natural existence. So this is a good alternative to squat because it's less pressure on the knees. So roll to the side, and maybe go the other side that you came up from, right? Just don't always repeat same side. It's a good idea to take both sides, depending on what you're doing. Okay, so take a cross-legged position, opposite leg in front. Feel where the hips are down and the heart is forward. Okay, and have a sense of your heart forward just for yourself. Just think in that internal focus, but also outwards to others. And bring the hands up in front of the heart, together, palms, inhaling, breathing in the practice, and exhaling, bowing into your heart.